Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru. Welcome to this minute 53 of Awake Minute by Minute podcast. I'll be your host today, Chris, with me, Mike and Priyank. And really, this minute, just to summarize it, it's really the turning point for Paramahansa Yogananda. He's looking to rebuild the Self Realisation Fellowship after facing severe trials and tribulations, seeing God in all beings, even his enemies. He's taking renewed strength in his mission to bring yoga to the West. We have Sri Daya Mata in this minute, so we'll be talking more about her, covering her in some detail today. That's in summary of the minute. Just a quick overview, but before we jump into it, Mike, Priyank, how are you guys doing today? How's everything in the UK, Priyank?
UK is deceptive. It's very sunny but very cold. A weather update. Haven't done that in a while. But I've done it for a reason. I'm feeling very cold. I'm doing a 2-day fast, 2-day complete fast. So I'm on my second day, and I feel like the cold is really getting to my bones.
Yeah, was it Guruji says to have orange juice and ground nuts, right?
Ground nuts, yeah.
But it's not the most warming of things. Where you want maybe a warm cup of tea or something and stew or soup.
But then Priyank wouldn't have orange juice or ground nuts, right?
I'm trialing it. I'm doing an extreme. Usually I just do like a 24 or 36 hour fast, but I'm trying a 48 or a 50, 60 hour fast this time. Okay. Just a complete fast.
Okay, and is that just, not to dwell too long on this, but does Guruji talk about just doing a more extreme fast from time to time?
No, but then you hear about the Giri Balas of this world, and they, Teresa Neumann's, and they doing the most extreme fasting that you can, in the sense that they live without food.
Yeah,
there's yogis there, and was it Master Mahasaya? Who was it? No. I think Master Mahasaya who basically didn't eat. So that's the goal.
Yeah. I have that.
Do you also experience the Passion of Christ every now and then?
Let me see.
That's good, but there's yogis in the Himalayas with nothing but a rag to cover them, so I'm sure you can make it work. Priyank, you're fully clothed, mate. Come on.
Well, I think this Charles Tirrett shirt will count in that regard.
Mike, how are you keeping? How's LA? How's everything? You were volunteering at Lake Shrine yesterday, yeah?
I do. Yeah, I do that regularly. Yeah, it's also sunny here, but warm. Like it.
I'm not going to chime in with a Brazilian weather update.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's a moderate warm for the weather update, and everything good. Yeah.
Awesome. Good. Well, for this minute then, let's jump into it. We have like two halves that we'll split into. The first half is more looking at the nuts and bolts of what's going on in the minute itself, and really we have some nice footage from what must be the 1930s. People still running around, continuing from the previous minute. We see throngs of people actually happy this time, which is good. And I think that sort of sets a nice tone for this minute where there's change. So we see, lots of people, young children, women, waving to the video camera, which would have been a very novel thing to do back in the day. And like I said, they're smiling. So the tone for this minute is change, in my opinion. It's a turning point for Yogananda to look to rebuild, as we'll get into in a minute. But it really continues on from the previous minute when he talked about walking away under the guise of renunciation being a very easy path and thing to do. And it shows more spiritual fiber to live a godly life in the jungle of civilization. So pleased to see we're really getting back into some of the positive notes of his journey. And really the script in this minute, the narrator comes in, talk over the video that we see, and he says, as Paramahansa Yogananda, "I love all, even those who avoid themselves my enemies. For I see thee in every being. I will rebuild this organization from scratch, just as I did when I arrived from India in 1920. So really inspirational, determined, gritty kind of words. Guruji is getting into the weeds with this one. And we see quite a kind of funny little video of what must be a journalist, typing away in black and white, quite dramatic scenes. So he's saying that, people avoid themselves my enemy, when I could fill in the blank here, when they don't really know Guruji, they don't really know and understand what Guruji is, and what he's standing for himself. So we see this journalist, typing away, unknowingly being the enemy to someone, which is quite a shame, but all very dramatic, impactful scenes initially in the minute. Mike, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was wondering about that journalist. I thought, oh, maybe that's like a reference to something of the time that I should know. Reminded me a bit of like Dick Tracy, because he had this hat on. But then I Googled the image, and it was stock footage of a guy behind a typewriter. But yeah, you see his shadow in the background that paints this dark picture, like you said.
Yeah, theatrical. Priyank?
Yeah, I think it represents like the shady like journalists that just wrote anything for the sake of making a headline, and the picture certainly fits that description.
Yeah, well, journalists are getting a pretty hard time of it these days in the media. I think all-time lows of faith and trust in journalism is being reached, certainly in the United States, with the polarization over there. Mike, you could probably tell us more about what's going on there with the media and journalism. The state of it is atrocious, but I think back in the day, 100 years ago, it was certainly seen as, it was the go-to place to get knowledge, wasn't it? Journalism, with newspapers, the wider mass of people would have to rely on that. Now we have so many streams of ways of getting information direct from the source, so to speak. Mike, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think it's only if you read it, you get it, right? So I don't know, like when you live here, you kind of don't notice all those discussions as much as maybe, I don't know, as what you would think. From my day-to-day life, I don't really notice much of the polarization of the country or anything like that. And
are you saying it exists only on TV?
I think it only exists on TV and on social media, really.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's really that important in day-to-day life.
It only exists in your mind, man.
Yeah.
I've become more and more disenfranchised with mainstream media, even like the broadsheets, because they try and have a more complete picture rather than just sensationalist headlines. Like, for example, I regularly read The Guardian here, and but like, for example, they're anti-India rhetoric in the sense of like, the political, how they comment on the political situation. For example, it's always Hindu nationalist this, or Hindu, the Hindu nationalist leader, or Hindutva leader Modi, and they don't provide the context. So it's always like anti-Muslim, pro-Hindu stuff like that Modi is supposed to be portraying. So like, I've tried to steer away from The Guardian and other British newspapers now. Wikipedia is my friend. I donate now, thanks. I think Mike advised me. I donate to Wikipedia now. I used to donate to The Guardian, but ever since that, all those stupid headlines, all those stupid way of portraying the Indian news, I now stopped pledging my monetary allegiance to such establishments. Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah, I'm a bit the same. I used to have a supporters membership at The Guardian, and I used to have a New York Times subscription. I stopped both of them. don't think all they say is wrong, but I don't think it's enough overlap for me to support them. I also give money to Wikipedia, like Priyank. I think that's a good place to give your money to. And I was wondering, like, I like reading newspapers from other countries, and India has an abundance of everything. Newspaper, like they are also super sensationalist, but also they have like the Times of India, which is like a bit more, I don't know, perspective newspaper, which I don't mind. Do you consume any of that, Priyank?
No. I try and read as much as I can in terms of different newspapers, but they're equally biased in terms of political parties, and so it's quite difficult to see the wood from the trees.
Reading the Bhagavad Gita with Paramahansa Yogananda's commentary.
Okay.
I'll segue back into it. But they talk there, about truth a lot, and Guruji talks about truth, and it's essential to spiritual practice, isn't it? And seems to be synonymous with truth and love, and these kind of words. And there's something unnerving and unsettling, to the spiritual kind of path whenever you see these sensationalist, leanings with journalists, because you think that's just untruthful, or you're leaving out the context, you're misleading people. So there's something, being on the path, at least, I can speak from my own experience, that whenever I see, other operations in the world that I deem untruthful, puts me off them immediately. I think more people are waking up to that. I could be wrong, but hopefully we're only going that one way towards, truth. But yeah, good. We're all in synchronicity with that one anyway. No major political divides and disputes coming in there. But yeah, any viewers have any takes on this, let us know, because it's definitely something on the tongues of many these days.
The reason I like The Guardian though is because it's the only broadsheet in the UK anyway that's actually like free to look at online. Like if you go to the Times, the Telegraph, these are all like very popular broadsheets. Well, the biggest broadsheets in the UK, and they're all behind a paywall. Whereas The Guardian, being a left-wing newspaper, is like against its ethos to put that into a paywall.
Capitalism, yeah. Well, it's a tough one, because even small amounts of money, I think the problem is the subscriptions. So I think people naturally want to go away from subscriptions because they'll forget that they're subscribed, and then 2 years later they're still paying and things like this. So different model. Are the US broadsheets paywalled, or are they free to view?
Yeah, they are all paywalled. I think with the New York Times, you can read 8 articles per month, and then the paywall comes up.
So, it's pretty sad because, like, if you like in school, for example, if you're studying like something that's a newspaper headline, you wouldn't want like the short sensationalist version that a tabloid paper would give. You'd want a complete picture if you're going to do an essay on something, right? Which is a paywall, which is crazy.
It is very sad, because the news that are free are very low quality often, with some exceptions. Wikipedia is an exceptional free source of very well researched articles often, but they're not news articles. They're more like a lexica. But like, I feel like even The Economist or The Guardian or the New York Times, sometimes they have like really well researched, really good articles, and you can't read them without paying. And like you said, if you are a student or in school, you basically have no access to any of that.
It is pretty cheap though, isn't it? Yeah, not to let's move on in this conversation. But no, they do a pretty good job at keeping the price down, given everything that they do. The Economist was one that I used to read in London, and that was pretty cheap. I think by the time you added everything up, it was only £1.50 or something per edition, which for the content is, like you said, it's well researched. But certainly Guruji was having his fair share of difficulties with journalism. It's safe to say, to segue back into this. And we see, you know, the videos. There's some really nice footage here in this minute, I thought, with the slow-mo of Guruji walking through what must be the, you know, Mount Washington land. I'm sure it looks very different to today, right? I haven't actually had the opportunity to go there yet, but there's an image of St. Mount Washington here from August 1929 in the video, which, yeah, looks very different from all the pictures I've seen. So probably a lot of change there. Maybe you guys that have been could tell us a little bit about the Mother Center and the development it's gone through.
Yeah, well, firstly, it says Mount Washington Educational Center. Obviously, we don't refer to that as that anymore. It's headquarters of Self Realisation Fellowship, Mount Washington. But the Educational Center, you'll recall, that was how Yogananda had first pitched it in terms of when it opened, and hence that's why this image is there, and with this very nice banner.
Yeah. So sorry, I didn't mention this, that there's the image of lots of tropical looking, is it palm trees and things like that, and a huge banner that says Mount Washington Educational Center, established by Swami Yogananda, and then the address with anniversary, all welcome. You know what, I did think, like, why did they put in bold the M, the W, the E, the C? Is that like, is there some abbreviation acronym or something?
MWEC.
Come on, guys. That's just good presentation.
Is it? Oh, I'm just off my banner making.
And I like, it's hand painted as well. It's so cool. It's not like a typeface.
Yeah, it's nice. It's like Arial style or something. Arial font. But yeah, it looks lovely, and they've edited in the video and the footage here really well, because this is Guruji, you know, saying that he's going to rebuild from scratch, and so we can really see it, you know, bare bones, the landscaping, that of everything that has been done over the years. You know, they've done an amazing job just on that alone, the amount of work that's gone into over the years. And really, we move into the second stage of this of this minute, where we have a Sri Daya Mata appearance, which is pretty cool. And we'll get into this in some detail. So I'll say first, really, what we see. So Sri Daya Mata is, you know, sitting, getting interviewed or speaking about Guruji, and she's saying that with renewed faith and determination, Paramahansa Yogananda would not give up on even though he was sorely tried and wanted to leave. He began to draw disciples. One of them was me. Priyank, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, so the first part of what she mentioned, you know, severe trials. Yogananda must have quoted, you know, one of the things he says, that he sees thee in everyone, even in his enemies. Which is, I think, quite a profound concept, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
How often do we forget that when someone, you know, if someone annoys us, or if someone has done us some harm or wrong in some way, it's quite difficult to imagine God in them at that point, isn't it?
Yeah, there was something I read about Sri Daya Mata. Correct me if I'm wrong in this case, but I think she said something like she didn't really believe in evil as such. She only believed in ignorance, and it was more, she was showing empathy towards those that might be deemed evil or be doing evil in any way. They were more ignorant of their actions, of the repercussions of these things. And it was so refreshing to be exposed to that concept, because immediately it instills this, you know, there goes me philosophy when you see others suffering or doing wrong, and builds empathy and love, really. Do you guys know if that's true, or Priyank?
I don't know if it's true, but it certainly resonates with what the meaning of her monastic name is, because Daya in most of the North Indian languages and Sanskrit means exactly what you say, like compassion, empathy, all of that feeling. So that's resonant with how she saw, evil, as it were.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I just wanted to also underline this, that like she's like the compassionate mother, and that's really what she is. She always, that I like that example that you give, that she says there is no evil but ignorance, and there was always, she never had this tone of this good and bad. She was always this person who would tackle everything with love, and it was such a loving vibe when she was in the room at convocation, for example. She just came in and suddenly there was this vibration and everybody was like totally transfixed. Yeah.
Tell us about, Mike, tell us about that. Do you remember that occasion? Tell us more about it.
I'm getting goosebumps here now.
I mean, obviously she had been giving convocation talks for decades, and I was just too small to remember. I remember seeing her in the 90s. I was quite young then. And she had already built up this reputation among longtime followers. So she just entered the room and she said something and everybody either burst out laughing or, like it was just such an energetic atmosphere there. And she would even make the hint of a joke and the whole room was like laughing for 5 minutes. That was a lot of mutual love, right, as well, because a lot of people also had been counseled by her or wrote her letters, and she was known to like answer every single letter that she gets personally, signing it back. And it was a different time. It wasn't the time before email, right? So, but it was such a that was really such a feeling of community, and this is like the head of the tribe, kind of. Yeah.
I remember when I first, my first convocation, when fortunately it was Sri Daya Mata was still in her body, and she was quite old at the time. So this is only like 5, 6 years ago, and I think it was the last convocation she did. My wife and I were there, and obviously she's got that similar aura that I imagine Daya Mata had, but I haven't met Daya Mata, so perhaps Mike, you can tell me whether or not that's true. But she had as soon as she entered the hall, like the connection with everyone was just there straight away. It was just like this impact, you feel that love and you feel that joy that comes out of it. And I remember like she often, because she was quite old at the time, she would mumble almost, not mumble, but she'd want to say so much and she wouldn't say it in a very cohesive way, but it didn't matter because you could feel with the words, with her voice, you could feel her connection with Guruji, being the last direct disciple, as it were, and you could feel that energy. So we could just, even though we didn't really understand, like she wasn't following a cohesive, like beautifully prepared dialogue that the other monastics prepare, it was just so much more impactful. And still, my wife still talks about it to this day, and if we do talk about it, we're just absolutely in our smiles are as wide as our whole face.
Nice. Yeah, it's something that in my earlier days with SRF, I didn't really know a lot about Sri Daya Mata, but I think intuitively you understood her to be this mother figure. And then later on, I would learn that Sri Daya Mata means in Sanskrit, compassionate mother. Yeah, that's the literal interpretation, and it just made so much sense to me. It was like I already knew somehow that was the case. So lots being communicated across various channels there with Sri Daya Mata. But before she was, let's say, ordained, is that the right word for it? Sri Daya Mata, she was a young Faye. Maybe Priyank, you could jump in and tell us a little bit more about her when she maybe first met Guruji and when she first came to the SRF.
Yes, her name was Faye Wright. Was that her name? Right, Faye Wright.
Yeah.
And let me just play you a short video. So she was attending a lecture given by Guruji at Salt Lake City. So if you remember when Guruji went across from New York to LA, he did that whole roundabout trip, and he conveniently skipped Salt Lake City and Utah. And we hypothesized that was not the time for the Wrights to, for him to pluck that family. And we'll discuss that in a minute. But in this case, he went there, and there was 4,000 people that attended. And let me just play the section. She's actually talked about this. So let me just play that.
On the way down to hear him, my sister and I walked that distance to the hotel where he was speaking in the large hall. And I remember as the doors of the hall were opened, everyone was already seated, and we were a little late. But as I stood at the entrance to that hall, I became absolutely transfixed. I couldn't breathe. There was no desire, no need to breathe. And my eyes were just locked on that figure that seemed to be a golden light, dressed in that ochre robe. And as I heard him speak, I remember thinking, he knows God. He is the first one that I have ever met, though I have visited many different churches in Salt Lake, different denominations. He is the first one who I see speaks from his inspiration, speaks from his direct knowledge, his direct experience of God. Him I shall follow. On the way down to...
It's amazing to hear, and really, it really reminds me. I was listening to a podcast there a few days ago, and there was a religious leader on the podcast, and I, having been exposed to so much now in SRF and Yogananda and so on, saw the difference in I wouldn't say interpretations, but with the channeling of God, where it wasn't there in this person that I was listening to, and it was a senior religious figure, and with absolute respect, I just felt very humble that there was this truth there in Yogananda that we've been drawn to for one reason or another. So I completely empathize, and actually makes me quite emotional thinking about it when you get drawn to somebody like Guruji, because he really is a soul interpreter and a spiritual interpreter of direct interpretation from God, and something very different about that than what the rest of the world seems to really go on. So yeah, amazing stuff. I'll stop there before I choke up, Mike.
Yeah, like Priyank said earlier, he talked about Mrinalini Ma and how she would compare to Daya Mata, and obviously I would never draw any comparison. For me, there are two masters of themselves. But the vibe in the room, they played different roles. And with Daya Mata, it always felt like she had like this direct connection with Guruji or God or Babaji or someone, like they're when there was a satsanga and somebody asked her a question, the first reaction of her was always her closing her eyes, and you knew there was something happening there. She would go somewhere deep inside to a place of wisdom and then come back with an amazing answer. But that it's hard to describe, but when you see it, you kind of feel like there was always something, a transcendental feeling to her, that she was always half here and half in the other world. Yeah.
Nice. Often Guruji would be seen that way, right?
Yes. And interestingly, when he did first meet Guruji, when she first, it says here that she had long suffered from a severe blood disorder, and while attending the Swami's class, she attracted his attention because of a bandage she had covering her whole swollen face. And Daya Mata recalled Paramahansa asking her if she believed that God could heal her. And when she said yes, he touched her between the eyebrows and said to her, "From this day forward, you are healed. In 1 week, the bandages will no longer be necessary. Your scars will be gone." And it happened exactly as he had predicted. So if she was ever in, she obviously had the feeling as soon as she entered that hall. But if she still had a doubt in her mind, then Guruji eradicated every doubt possible with that Christ-like healing, which we don't hear much about, do we? This is we hear about Guruji writing about the Christ-like masters that he'd met in India, but we don't hear that much unless we delve into the stories of the direct disciples, such as Daya Mata, from the miracles that Guruji himself performed. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I was just going to say something similar, that Guruji keeps recounting the miracles that Sri Yukteswar kind of did. Like, he healed his friends, he healed different kind of people, and it happened like all the time. But the miracles that he himself performed, he never mentions them because he's too humble for that. And unfortunately, so far there aren't so many like autobiographies of his direct disciples. Would have been like, I love all the Daya Mata books. They're talks of her, and sometimes she mentions it, but like a systematic autobiography of her would probably be full of miracles that
yeah, they probably don't want to draw too many people away from the Guru, right? Which exactly. Has its own place. But yeah, you're right. I remember Ananda Moy talked about this lovely story where, like, towards the end of his his life in this body, Guruji took on the karma of lots of the disciples, and he could barely walk at one stage, so he couldn't even walk up the stairs. So like the monks would carry him, like 4 monks would carry him up the stairs, and he then said, "You carry my body, I'll carry your souls."
Oh, yeah.
What a beautiful.
Now, on that note, isn't your text? I think Guruji was saying, stick to your meditation practice. Whatever effort you'll do, I'll be, he'll effectively be doing sort of 50, 60, 70, 80% of the work. Just all you have to do, show up, with dedication, love and attention, to the meditations. I'll be right there with you, sort of thing. So
25% is your effort, 25% is Guru's effort, 50% above grace of God.
Thank you.
So 75% we're getting for free.
For free, yeah.
But only if we do our parts.
Yes. Yeah. You have to commit.
That's the caveat. That's it. We have talked about miracles and things in the past. I've just checked. Minute 32, we were talking about Jesus Christ's miracles, and minute 41, we were talking about the supernatural and bits and pieces there. So do check out those if you want to hear more about miracles and on that subject. Pranam, did you have more to continue with there?
No, I was going to talk about her family life then, if that's now the
Let's
convenient
go.
time.
Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
go.
So they, you may or may not know that Faye Wright's family belonged to the Mormons, or the Church of the Latter-day Saints, who are kind of mostly based in Utah, or Salt Lake City being their capital in terms of they've got their biggest churches or temples. I don't know, you'd probably call them temples. And so, yeah, the family was pretty hardcore in that. And Salt Lake City was founded by one of the pioneers in 1847, Brigham Young, I think it was, to escape persecution in the eastern states. But yeah, so her mum was Ananda Mata, became a nun. No, sorry, her mum was Shama Mata, who joined the ashram in 1935. And then her sister Ananda Mata became a nun in 1933 and served for many years as secretary and treasurer. And she had two brothers, Richard Wright, who assisted Guruji, as you'll know, in the autobiography of Yogi, in his trip to India in 1935 and 36. And also another brother, Dale Wright, who also remained a lifelong follower. So the whole family, one way or the other, joined either as direct disciples.
Nice. Yeah, it's a pretty impressive impact. If you think about the timing of what was going on and what we're looking at in this minute, Guruji was saying, I'm going to be rebuilding this organization from scratch. Well, he can't do it on his own. And we'll see, just how much of an impact Sri Daya Mata had in those early years. She was one of the first disciples to join Guruji and the order. But it wasn't all smooth sailing for her. As Priyanka mentioned, the family were prominent Mormons in Salt Lake City. I found on, I think, let me just check this website. I think it's the yogananda.org website. Yeah. A great little passage. I'll read out here. One of the first monastic disciples of Self Realisation Fellowship was Sri Daya Mata, but it would require a miracle for her for that to come to pass. This family opposition was great. She was still a young girl, and her staunchly Mormon relatives, with the exception of her understanding mother, were firmly against her leaving home. And bear in mind, she was 17. Yeah, so she's pretty young for her to follow a religion wholly foreign to them. One evening, Paramahansa Yogananda said in his lectures that if a devotee called deeply enough to God with determination to receive a response, his answer would be forthcoming. Daya Mata made her resolve, and that night, after her family had retired, she went into her living room, and there she could be alone. Tears flowed as she poured out her heart to God. After several hours, a profound peace came over her whole being, and she could cry no longer. She knew that God had heard her prayer. Within 2 weeks, all doors were opened. And on November 19th, 1931, she was able to enter Paramahansa Yogananda's ashram in Los Angeles. And then it goes on to say, with an eager and receptive heart, she absorbed her guru's guidance, and she saw in the potential for the vital part that she would eventually play in his mission. Shortly after their first meeting, Paramahansaji gave her the final vows of renunciation observed by India's ancient Swami order: celibacy, non-attachment to possessions, obedience and loyalty to God and Guru. She thus became one of the first sannyasis, nuns in Self Realisation Fellowship, pledging her heart and soul to a lifelong practice of complete dedication to God and Guru, daily meditation and selfless service to others. So that's really to tee up her life in the Swami order, which she was there for a long time, right? 55 years. And she was, lucid. It was said she was lucid right up to, till her late days when she was 90, was it 95?
96 when she passed, yeah.
So amazing initial stories there, initiations into the order. Priyank, did you want to jump in there? Your hand.
Yeah, she was one of the, at that time, she wouldn't, there wouldn't have been many figures in India, let alone in the US, that are women leaders of spiritual organizations. Obviously, we know that she later became the president of SRF. And yeah, she was breaking new ground there, because misogyny was still a big thing in most parts of the world, let alone heads of religious organization. I mean, can you imagine the Pope being a female?
Yeah, even to this day, yeah, still quite challenging. Mike?
And I think she became the model disciple of Guruji that is referred to in a lot of places. And so a lot of the stories that like Guruji would recount about him and Sri Yukteswar, where he learned some key lessons. There were similar stories of her and Guruji. And so she was like the model disciple that kind of put out a blueprint for everybody else, I'm guessing.
Was she and Sister Daya Mata the two like twin model disciples?
They played, I feel like they played different roles. I feel like Sister Daya Mata, she was like when you read her books and stuff, when you read her book and the letters they are between them, yeah, I really don't want to compare those either.
I was drawing you into a trap.
Yeah, I just found the stories that Daya Mata recounted very relatable to my own life, because there were oftentimes very small things or very things where it was about being too proud or being too, you know, those kind of things. I feel like Daya Mata didn't have those problems so much. Yeah.
His most advanced disciple, he used to call her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll delve into a little bit more about her background now. Maybe on the Sri Daya Mata card, guys. Maybe Mike, do you want to just read that bit out about the first woman to lead a worldwide religious organization?
So Daya Mata was one of the first women to lead a worldwide religious organization and a monastic order. In today's Women in World Religions by Arvind Sharma, Linda Johnson was quoted as saying that the new wave today is women, because major Indian gurus have passed on their spiritual mantle to women, including Yogananda, to the American-born Daya Mata. So I don't know exactly when this was written, but this must have been a huge thing, especially as SRF started growing, and she was head of that organization longer than anybody else. So very strong presence of a strong woman. And you know, like I feel like the times have changed now, but I'm sure back then people were like, oh, there's a woman, so she can't be strong, or she won't be able to do it as well as a man can. And I think she proved everybody wrong and maneuvered SRF and YSS through the most difficult times. And I think that's why she was put there, because she would be the one who was able to solve all those problems.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point, and you're definitely doing something right after 55 years of essentially leading a worldwide organization. And I saw online, you know, she helped the fellowship expand across the globe with 600 temples or centers attracting tens of thousands of devotees in more than 175 countries. And importantly, I noted here that she resisted the trend in other religions to modernize services with rock music and other innovations, continuing the format of meditation, a sermon and chants sung to a harmonium. That was little change from Yogananda's days. And coming into the SRF, you really do get that authentic feel, don't you? That, you know, it's Guruji's, it's how Guruji really had it. And sure, you know, there's a lot of modernization happening at the moment, which we've talked about. And we've talked about that being in the spirit of Yogananda's efforts when he was here. in the way that he took on new technology, with the mail order lessons and things like this, and using airplanes to get the message out to people. So I'm sure he's all up for innovation, but it's quite good to note that even over all these years, she was so dedicated to Guruji's teachings, and she never really took she never took any applaud or anything. She always said, "Look, this is Guruji's work. I'm doing this for Guruji. Guruji, how would Guruji want it?" She often said, what would Guruji say and what would Guruji do? So she always, fell back and tried to channel what was best from Guruji's perspective. Priyank?
Yes, indeed. I think she also, I can't recall another spiritual organization or ashram leader in India that was a woman. So potentially she was the first, even in India, to lead a major organization such as YSS, as it was back then. Yeah, Mike?
Bit of a loaded question. Priyank, there's a struggle of the role of the women that we have gone through in the past, like maybe even century. Where would you see India on this road back when she was taking over, like in the 50s and till now?
I think people, especially in the West, they see India as like rife with misogyny and sexism, and pro male domination in terms of society. But I think India was. I don't think that's true. I think the devotional elements of how women in family life serve their family and serve their communities is revered to the state. It's not uncommon for if you meet an old lady on the street, you'd call her ma, you'd call her mother, or mata. Some would even go even further, mata, which is divine mother. And where else in the world would you ever see a lady and refer to her as divine mother or mother? You wouldn't. And this is like ingrained in the culture. So just because women don't take up prominent, or not as many women take up prominent roles in political elite and other places, even though Indira Gandhi was one of the first prime ministers of India, but in terms of the sheer numbers, you don't see as many as in Western countries, for example. But that doesn't mean that that's because sexism is rife. It's because I don't know, the culture and what women want to prioritize in their lives is different, perhaps. I don't know.
Spiritual organizations, the one side. How many women leaders are there now in the world? I think in Northern Ireland, we've got women. We at least had women leaders on both sides of the oppositional parties. In the UK, we've had women leaders there, and so the words there that you read out earlier, Mike, that it's a new wave. The new wave today is women. That was, I'm not sure when that was actually written, to your point, but definitely correct. Certainly in the last, say, 60 years, it's been prevalent. So Sri Daya Mata would have been leading the way in her role and responsibilities. And she had a lot of responsibilities. This is not to, it's pretty impressive, what she managed to do all the way throughout her time with the SRF. And I made a note of a few. I'm sure you guys can chip in with a couple more that you know of. But she was doing the annual convocations. She was conducting sannyasi's vows. She was leading the all-day Christmas meditations with Marilina Mata at times. She was traveling all throughout the world in order to spread Gurudeva's teachings. She was compiling the guidance of Paramahansa Yogananda's work. she was detailing his memoirs of the 20 years that she was with him. That was a huge task, as we all know. And she was working with Daya Mata in the editor-in-chief at the time, preparing the publication for Paramahansaji's commentaries on the New Testament, as well as his collected talks, essays, poems, and inspirational prose writings. And she was really adverse to this, right? She didn't want to take on the role. She was saying to Guruji, like, "Oh, come on, please, like let me just like remain as a devotee. Let somebody else run the organization." And in some ways, when I was reading up about this, I was thinking, how similar is that to Yogananda's perspective, right? And probably, I'm completely assuming here, but probably is going to be the way that the leaders in SRF are, because I've often heard, like, if somebody's really gunning for the leadership of an organization like that, it's maybe a little bit suspect. You want somebody for the job that doesn't want the job, kind of thing. And she was really quite concerned, like, why me? In pure humility. And we're going to come on to a story where she was saying that to Babaji as well in a moment. But certainly she made that known to Guruji, to Paramahansa Yogananda, that she would have maybe preferred not to take up the role of the leader of the organization, and she was more akin to simply doing her devotional tasks and everything else, other than being the kind of head figure. So no better person, in my opinion, just because of that notion. But he was reassuring her at all times that she was the right one for the job. And people read an article online. Let me just get this: yogananda.com.au, and then /Daya Mata. Worth checking out, if anybody wants to read up more on this. But it was said there that people often asked her, how did she balance her life, giving her enormous responsibilities. And sorry, I just lost the card. Let me go back and find this again. And she invariably replied saying, "I'm able to carry on all these duties, not in spite of the spiritual routine, but because of it. That is where my strength, inspiration, and guidance comes from. Meditation in the morning, noon, and evening, and keeping my mind constantly focused on God in between meditations, as Paramahansaji taught us." And she also always reminded us that if she was able to do this, so are we, and thus reap the benefits of our spiritual efforts while living our active lives, finding joy and fulfillment even in the midst of a demanding schedule. And just thought that was great. So she had been doing that for so many decades, with such a huge schedule and weight of responsibilities, and that was her answer. It's so great to see. And she often called the work that she did just a service, and thought, again, that's so many lovely insights into the person that she was when she was with us here in the physical plane. We've got so many stories, right? And we'll try to maybe summarize parts of them, but we want to share a couple. Maybe we'll go to one first on the divine confirmation story from Babaji, and really just to kind of provide some context to the story. Sri Daya Mata was heading to Mahavatar Babaji's cave near the Himalayas near Raniket. We covered this was it the previous minute, or no? It was two minutes ago, right? I think that mine's gone. And she was in deep meditation.
1963 it was, yeah.
1963. And she was in deep meditation, and she had a certain experience that we'll delve into. Mike, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I think it was Pablo who talked about this, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, must have been last episode.
Yeah. So she says, "For a time, I sat in the Katgodam railway station all alone. The other devotees had gone outside to wait for the cars. With deep feeling and devotion, I was practicing what we call in India Japa Yoga, repeating the name of the divine again and again and again. In this divine practice, The whole consciousness gradually becomes absorbed in one thought to the exclusion of everything else. I was taking the name of Babaji. All I could think about was Babaji. My heart was bursting with a thrill of indescribable. Suddenly, I lost all awareness of this world. My mind was completely withdrawn into another state of consciousness. In an ecstasy of sweetest joy, I beheld the presence of Babaji. I understood what Saint Teresa of Avila meant when she spoke of seeing the formless Christ, the individuality of spirit manifesting as soul, cloaked only in the thought essence of being. This seeing is a perception more vivid and exact in detail than the gross outlines of material forms or even visions. Inwardly I bowed and took the dust of his feet.
Wow.
Want to
That,
continue?
I will continue, but should we just reflect on that phenomenon?
Go
So
for it,
she
yeah.
she just said, just repeat, seeing, she understood what Saint Teresa of Avila meant when she spoke of seeing the formless Christ, and the individuality of spirit manifesting as soul, cloaked only in the thought essence of being. This seeing is a perception more vivid and exact in detail than the gross outlines of material forms or even of visions. So inwardly she bowed and took the dust of his feet. So this is just phenomenal, isn't it? We were just discussing before this podcast how we know someone that left Guruji or left Self Realisation Fellowship because they wanted a living guru, and so they joined an organization that had a lineage that was, with a guru in his physical form. And in my mind, unfortunately I wasn't that close to this devotee. Otherwise, I would have offered my experience in this, and it would be similar to this. Like, if you if you don't see Guruji as a living presence in your life, then you're missing probably one of the most beautiful elements of this particular guru-disciple relationship, and it's so eloquently described by Daya Mata in this section. Yeah, Mike.
One thing that they often talk about when someone sees a vision is that it's more vivid than what you could see with your own eyes, what you could perceive with your own senses, that it's somehow more real than our reality that we are perceiving. I find that very inspirational, to the point that I'm like, I want to have that kind of experience. Of course we all do. But imagine there's just Babaji there in front of you, and everything else goes away. All the other senses are suddenly gone. Fantastic. And yeah, like you said, she's so eloquent, explaining the situation.
Yeah.
Pretty incredible. It's like you almost think that if this is some kind of, projection simulation, we're running in we're not in HD quite yet. There's a higher definition of reality that's more magic, more engaging and more wonderful than this. Sorry, Mike, do you have another?
No, I just had it still open.
4K. Okay. We're in 4K, Chris.
We're in 4, exactly.
8K. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
Shall I continue?
Yes.
So Master had told some of us, you need never concern yourself about the leadership of our society. Babaji has already selected those who are destined to lead this work. When I was chosen by the board, I questioned, why me? Now I found myself appealing to Babaji about it. They chose me. I am so unworthy. How could it be? I was sobbing inwardly at his feet. So sweetly he replied, my child, you must not doubt your Guru. He spoke the truth. What he told you is true. As Babaji spoke these words, a blissful peace came over me. My whole being remained bathed in that peace. For how long, I do not know. Gradually, I became aware that the others in the party had come back into the room. When I opened my eyes, I beheld my surrounding with a new perception. I remember exclaiming, "Of course, I have been here before." Everything was instantly familiar to me. Memories of past lifetimes reawakened. Chris?
Maybe you guys can fill me in here, but when I first read this, I thought, is she saying she almost was in such a transcendental state that she nearly forgot her being and her life, and then she came back and remembered it? Is that what I'm taking from this?
I think, well, firstly, you know, when you do japa yoga, you say the name of God and you repeat it 108 times usually with one round of your mara. But you know, in the autobiography of a yogi, he says that repeating Babaji's name actually provides an instant spiritual blessing. And she was in this extremely exceptionally deep state of, like she said, she went really deep. Her whole consciousness gradually became absorbed in the one thought to the exclusion of everything else. And she said her heart was bursting with a thrill indescribable. So I think this blessing in this case is memories of past lifetimes reawakened, not in my opinion, not just, you know, what she was doing just before this moment, this transcendental moment. But you could debate it either way.
Sure.
Mike? Yeah, Chris.
I was just going to say, we've mentioned Lord of the Rings a few times before in this podcast. You know, when Gandalf the Grey goes in like this mad fight with whatever beast and comes back as Gandalf the White and says, "Oh yes, that's what they used to call me, Gandalf the Grey." So not to, you know, to belittle the story at all. It's such an amazing recollection. But
well, this is where Tolkien and co get their inspiration from, no doubt.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, it's almost a spiritual reawakening, isn't it? But sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. I'm all on the Tolkien train with that. I feel like a lot of mysticism, like Tolkien himself said, he wrote Lord of the Rings and some of his other books because he thought the UK was lacking the mysticism of the Nordic countries, and he wanted to replace or like fill in this void kind of. And yeah, did a great job of that. Priyank, nice flex with the Mara beads. That was pretty like when she talks about she has been here before, that kind of reminds me of Lahiri Mahashai going to Babaji, and he goes like, "Don't you remember? You've been here before." So there's this group of disciples that travel with Babaji, right, from place to place in the Himalayas. And then he says his famous sentence, and then it disappears. What is it?
Dera Danda Utao.
Dera Danda Utao, right? Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Let us lift up our camp and staff.
Yeah. And Lahiri Mahashai was one of them, and Daya Mata was also one of them. That's what she kind of says here, right?
Yes.
And that's why she's so familiar with Babaji, and that's also why I think that there's an interpretation of her going to Babaji's cave that he tells her that she didn't have to come here to experience him.
Yeah.
Also because he doesn't want her in this lifetime to stay here, right? In this lifetime she has a mission out there. She will come back in another time.
But I don't think we can emphasize the whole inwardly this experience being inward. Like she mentioned, she inwardly took the dust off his feet, and inwardly she felt it, and it was more real than anything that we perceive as real with our two silly eyes. And we shouldn't we shouldn't kind of negate or undermine or belittle the experiences we have inwardly in meditation. Even that feeling of peace and joy, we may not fully grasp the significance, but Babaji being that close to us may be a reality for us, but you haven't really yet opened that third eye to see that whole picture of that blessing, of that peace and that joy that we're experiencing, which is not easily had, is it? It's not easy to just, if I say, guys, let's take 2 minutes, how often in 2 minutes would you get to that state? Would you be quite fortunate to get to it in 2 minutes? But every now and then we have that blessing, we have that joy, and we should relish it.
Absolutely. And we have another story, right? Priyank, you have a couple bits here. Do you want to read the part on the prophetic vision?
Yes. So this is also during the same sort of time where she went to Babaji's cave, and she talks about this in some of her lectures, but it's written about it in more detail here, which I'll read out. After satsang was over and the villagers had dispersed, we sat for meditation and then retired, climbing into our warm sleeping bags. In the middle of the night, I had a super conscious experience. A huge black cloud suddenly swept over me, trying to engulf me. As it did so, I cried out to God, awakening Anandama and Umama, who were in the room with me. They were alarmed and wanted to know what had happened. I don't want to talk about it now, I told them. I'm all right, go back to sleep. Through the practice of meditation, the all-knowing power of intuition develops in each of us. I had intuitively understood that the divine was telling me through this symbolic experience. It foretold a serious illness I was soon to undergo, and it also indicated that all mankind would face a very dark time during which the evil force would seek to engulf the world. Because the cloud did not completely envelop me, it was repulsed by my thoughts of God. The vision signified that I would come through the personal danger, which I did. Similarly, it showed that the world also would ultimately emerge from the threatening dark cloud of karma, but mankind would first have to do its part by turning to God. Mike?
Yes, it's amazing that she shared an experience like this, because I feel like they often see the future but don't tell it. Like, for example, when Babaji appeared to Guruji at the hotel in Mumbai, he said, no, sorry, it was Christ, right? Christ appeared to him, and he said he gave some prophecies about the world that I won't share at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how he says it.
Mm.
So the fact that he shares it means that we need to deal with it, right? We need to feel like there's something like that coming. And there's this famous talk that she gave at a convocation sometime in the 90s, and it's on YouTube now with the title A Promise of Light, where she mentions it. And like she says here, it's about mankind turning to God to avoid the darkness. And she already says that at the time back then in the 90s when she says it, that this darkness had already begun. So I'm guessing since then it has only increased. And we yet have to wait for this moment where we have this broad pivot of mankind where everybody turns to God.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that you could draw the parallels with what's happened with the pandemic, with the world going through this dark cloud of a time where it engulfed the entire world, really, and we all had to bond together and come to some form of understanding of what was going on and try to in a way get over the separation that happened and come together in other ways that are maybe non-physical. And certainly we've felt it in SRF, haven't we? Being broken up, not able to go into the temples, and the temple was really brought into the home of everybody. So it found some roots in all things that are good, and yeah, it's incredible. She's sharing these stories with us, and that are so relatable to today. Mankind would first have to do its part by turning to God, and I think that there is a more of a spiritual awakening now than ever, really, because people are looking for more meaning in life, well-being, and so on and so forth. Mike, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, ever since this came out, every time there is a crisis in the world, the question to whoever is president of SRF at the moment is always, is this the dark cloud that Daya Mata was talking about? I remember in the beginning of the pandemic, there was a few in 2020 and 2021, there were a few talks by president of SRF,
Brother
Chidananda, and he said one of the questions he was asked a lot is this the cloud now that Daya Mata was talking about? And his answer was, it can be. And it depends on what we learn from it and what we take away from it. And if we won't, then another thing will come and another thing will come until we do.
Yeah, pretty nice. And she, of course, had a lot in her time of being the president of SRF, and one of her more famous students that she reportedly had was Elvis Presley. I think we maybe have mentioned this before, but they met in the 60s, and Elvis Presley read her book Only Love and kept it in his library. And there's some pictures online, I believe, of him and another actor who he was very close with, and the two of them were in the SRF in the headquarters in LA, which is really nice.
Chris, was Elvis an ET like a lot of people think he was?
People think he's an ET.
Yeah. There's a big cult. There's a big cult thing about that.
And also, is he coming back?
Or did he ever go?
Did he ever go? Him and Bob Marley at a beach somewhere. I don't know. He certainly had a great energy about him, didn't he, Elvis? One of love from as far as I could see. So he was drawn to Daya Mata.
And anyone that can dance like that and sing like that can't be human, can they? It's got to be something beyond.
Vibrating in a different way. But maybe, Mike, actually, you could read. There's a really nice little story here about during the first Christmas at the SRF with between Paramahansa and Sri Daya Mata.
Which card is that?
So I've just pinged it to you actually in the chat, but it's on the Sri Daya Mata card. I've tagged you in it, but it's in the chat in the.
Okay. So during her first Christmas at the SRF YSS International Headquarters in Ashram atop Mount Washington, Paramahansaji placed a little glass egg on the divan where he knew she would sit. When she asked him why he had put it there, he told her, "You are my nest egg. When you came, I knew many other true devotees would be drawn to this path." Ah, that's so sweet.
Yeah, such a sweet story, isn't it?
Are you, Chris? Are you also one of his nest eggs?
I do have many eggs around me.
I know, that's fine.
I don't know if they're being left by Guruji. So really, there's probably so much more that we could go into here. I did want to throw in coming to some closing period here, something that Sri Daya Mata said, and I think it was in an interview, or it was a talk that she gave, I can't remember which, but she said that we must always remember the point behind our service, behind our entire lives, the reason why, the reason we came on this path and follow our guru to find God. When we put that first, we will find the blessings in every experience, every challenge. And then the true strength of Self-Realization Fellowship, it is the ability to grow and adapt and serve in the new millennium, lies in the efforts of each of us to live the spirit of Guruji. And of course, for me, that means one thing: the immortal words that he spoke to me just before his passing: when I'm gone, only love can take my place. Be so drunk with the love of God night and day that you won't know anything but God, and give that love to all. And what was Sri Daya Mata but incarnation of love, right? So yeah, really, really nice there. Guys, do you have anything that you would want to add in closing?
Yes.
Mike?
I've just got one thing. You know, and firstly, that's such a beautiful beautiful statement, that Guruji be so drunk with God, with love of God at night and day, that you won't know anything but God, and give that love to all. It's just such a lovely meditation, isn't it? That we can all practice, not just Daya Mata being an embodiment of that. But going back to the minute, she says, you know, lots of devotees came to him, and one of them, she says, one of them was me.
Yeah.
And when she said, I urge you to like play that, go back to that section on the 52nd or 53rd minute, and just watch her, or listen to the words that she said, and it's with such a devotion. It's just indescribable. Yeah, just thought I'd add that.
So much humility. You're absolutely right. When it struck my consciousness as well when I heard it, like she's so humble, so humble, and in that humility and desire to be with God, it just comes across just in that little word, doesn't it?
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Mike. Anything?
Yeah, I wanted to mention her relationship to Swami Shyamananda. And just to put some context in, there were some difficult times for YSS back in the 60s. That was maybe also one of the reasons why she traveled to India in 1963. There was the Puri ashram that belonged to Swami Shri Yukteswar was claimed and seized by another religious group led by Swami Harihananda, and there were legal injunctions, and it all became pretty difficult. And while she was in India, she met a yogi. His name was Bina Narayan, and he was very spiritually advanced, and he asked Daya Mata to initiate him into Kriya Yoga, and he was a he made very spiritual progress, and he became Swami Shyamananda at YSS, and he became kind of her second in command, especially in India, and people compare him to Rajasi Janakananda. They call him the Rajasi of India. And he helped her stabilize and kind of bring YSS on the right path, and help make it what it is today. And there's a story where they both are in Puri. They go to the Jagannath temple, which is a very ancient temple devoted to Krishna. And it is said that even Christ had gone to the Jagannath temple on his journey to India. So it has been there for a very long time, and it's a very holy place. And they meditate there together. And maybe we can close by me reading out this section. But as he describes meditating with Daya Mata, he said, "I stood at a distance on one side against the wall, watching my meditation. Suddenly, her form began to disappear into light. I looked at Jagannath's image at the altar, then back to Ma, and again at the altar. Several times I did this, shaking my head to be sure I was not imagining. I knew they were one. This experience continued for a long time. Then gradually, Ma's form began to reappear. After a while, she got up and left the temple. As she did so, I noticed she dropped her ochre handkerchief. I wondered why those who were with her did not pick it up. And then there's this whole story about him bringing her the handkerchief, and which means that he picked up Guruji's banner and will join her task to work for YSS. Yeah.
It's a
Wow.
symbolic gesture, yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So some context. So that Puri is the ashram in Puri, or the main mandir temple, is one of the Char Dhams, or one of the 4 most important temples in India, established by Shankaracharya. So yeah, so it's really important. But I actually love this. How mystical, isn't it? What a description. This is another instance where now we're not just talking about miracles that we know that Yogananda performed because their disciples talked about them. Here we're talking about miracles performed by Guruji's disciples that the disciples may have witnessed, and it's such a it's so beautifully described, isn't it?
Mm.
He was like, he had to be sure that he wasn't imagining. It's just a crazy. We'll put a link to this on the description, but it's just a beautiful story. Thanks for finding that, Mike.
Nice. Priyank, in closing, then you have a prayer that I believe Sri Daya Mata has said in the past.
Perhaps. Let's close. Thanks for joining us, everyone. It's been a beautiful dedication to Sri Daya Mata. Heavenly Father, Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Bhagwan Krishna, Mahavatar Babaji, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswara, and our beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, saints and sages of all religions, we bow to you all. Heavenly Father, help us be so drunk with the love of God, night and day, that we won't know anything but God. And may we be able to give that love to all. Om
Oh.
Shanti. Shanti.